Welcome back to Full Circle Florida, everyone. A shooting in Ybor City, a shooting at Armature Works, a shooting at Soho. These are some of the most popular spots in Tampa where gun violence has not only erupted recently, it's also cost lives. As we move closer to Election Day, gun violence is one of the key issues that will play a role in deciding the presidency. Now, this week, our Joe St. George takes a closer look at the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump when it comes to guns.
Every corner of this country has been impacted in some way by crime and gun violence. If you've ever been a victim, it may be the biggest issue for you in this election. And like so many other issues, President Biden and former President Trump differ greatly on what should be done. Let's start with the similarities between Trump and Biden on guns. Take, for instance, the issue of bump stocks, devices that modify how fast a gun can be fired, turning them into machine gun-like devices. On this issue, Trump and Biden both support a ban. In fact, former President Trump enacted a bump stock ban when he was in office. On the issue of states passing red flag laws, which temporarily removes firearms from someone deemed a threat, Trump encouraged states to pass them during his first term. President Biden has done the same and funded state programs so they could expand. But after those two issues, it's difficult to find similarities.
When I'm back in the Oval Office, no one will lay a finger on your firearms. It's not going to happen.
The former president is promising to block new gun laws if elected. Meanwhile, President Biden wants new restrictions.
We need to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
To be clear regarding banning AR-15s, Biden supports a ban, Trump does not. On expanded background checks, President Biden supports them and just finalized a rule to close a loophole which allowed some private gun sales to happen without inquiries. Former President Trump is opposed. President Biden instituted a zero-tolerance policy for gun dealers who violate existing laws. Former President Trump worries that a clerical error could shut down a business. Trump told the NRA this year that he would repeal all of President Biden's executive orders related to guns. Of course, addressing crime and gun violence can involve more than just debates about new gun restrictions. Former President Trump has vowed to send the National Guard into cities that are dealing with a rise in crime. Meanwhile, President Biden has stressed that gun violence is down. Homicides declined by around 13% last year nationwide. President Biden's Justice Department has spent millions on crime prevention task forces in recent years, including new initiatives like ones to combat carjacking. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
All right, so let's bring in our guest this week to help us make sense of all the topics. He is the host of the Ryan Gorman Show. You can catch him weekday mornings, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on News Radio WFLA and iHeartRadio. Ryan Gorman, he's a friend of the show. He's back with us here this week. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Make sense of all of that. That's a lot of pressure.
No pressure at all. You are our shepherd through this crazy week. But I'll tell you, we've had some real high-profile, violent cases of gun incidents in Tampa. The numbers, don't reflect the headlines when it comes to gun violence, or at least the numbers the cops put out. Crime, including gun crime, is down in Tampa. Yeah. So that's good news if you believe the numbers, but it doesn't feel that way because you've had these high-profile shootings at these popular hangout spots, Ybor City, Soho, Armature Works. What do you think is going on here? Is this gun culture run amok?
I think there's a lot of things at play here. Obviously, it's easy access to guns. There's no question about that. But we also have this part of society now where, and I think the internet, social media has added to this, where we're desensitized, especially younger people, and they're very quick to pull the trigger. Yeah. I mean, in Armature Works, that was over like a water bottle.
Right, teenagers.
Yeah, and a pregnant woman gets shot. And we saw these young people pulling out guns. First of all, they have the guns, and they're pulling them out and shooting in these crowded areas. And we're really lucky that we haven't had an even worse tragedy than we've seen so far with these incidents.
State Attorney Susie Lopez was here, and I was asking her, is there something going on different now than there was 10 years ago? And I guess the X factor would be.
Yeah,
I hate to sound like the old guy, social media, but
it's true.
What is it?
Yeah, that's the differentiator between that time and what we're dealing with now. And when you have it at places where people go, and you have big crowds like that, there becomes a vibes factor to it. It's not like an isolated shooting here and an isolated shooting there. Oh. These are big headlines.
All right, another big topic this week, marijuana Amendment 3. The media blitz and the ad campaign launched for pro Amendment 3 for making recreational marijuana legal. That's one side of it. Of course, the other side is going to launch their campaign too. Do you think this issue is going to drive voters to the polls like the abortion amendment, or do you not think it's that big of an attractive sell?
I don't think it's as big of a deal as the abortion amendment. I think this amendment could ride the coattails of that, because if you look at some of the people who have been energized based on abortion being on the ballot in other states, it can tend to be younger people, and those are also a part of the electorate that might be more likely to vote for this amendment. I think both amendments are easily going to clear the 50% threshold. They'll get a majority of the vote, but it's 60% here to pass.
Yeah, even the marijuana amendment, which does pass, I think recent polling shows 50%.
It's like
but
right there, yeah.
It falls
close
short
to
of
60.
It falls short of 60.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is interesting about that is you would think that, okay, well, pro-marijuana is a win for the Democrats, and it doesn't really break down that way. I talked to a lot of people this week, and you'll see it on the Your Voice segment I do later, and some of these, they come from all different backgrounds. A lot of them were for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're voting Democrat or Republican in other places.
It's one of those issues that gets bipartisan support, but I think it's always been a matter of when, not if, and if it's not this time around, it'll eventually get there here in the state of Florida. I just don't know that this is the year, but I do think it has a chance to pass.
Well, the big news that dropped this week, the debates. We're going to have our debates. Both candidates agreeing, not one but two, no live audience. Could this decide the election? How big do you think these debates will be?
The only way this decides the election is if Biden falls on his face.
That's what everyone's sort of
during
banking
one of
on.
these. Yeah, and you know, I think it's a mistake for the Trump campaign and Trump surrogates and the former president himself to set the bar so low. I mean, the way they're setting the bar, if Biden is just able to stand up at the podium during the debate, he gets a passing grade.
You don't think that's overplayed, though? He gives the State of the Union. Everyone thought, and he actually overperformed. Could he overperform?
That's why it's a mistake for them to keep saying that he can't do something like that, because then if he does, then you're going to have a lot of Americans watching like, he seemed all right. But if he does have a really bad performance, especially in the June one, you're going to hear a lot of talk about what do we do with this candidate.
Because there would still be time there before the convention. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's hush money trial, is this thing going to backfire on the Team Biden and their campaign if they think that this is actually turning voters away? Or do you think people are looking at this, if they're paying attention to it at all, and saying, you know what, this is a waste of time?
I don't think most people are paying attention to it. I think everyone will pay attention to the verdict. I mean, the polling has showed it could have an impact on the race, but I think in terms of it making a substantial difference, it's unlikely. Not this case, maybe some of the other cases, but this case I think people view as political.
See, you did help us make sense of it.
I tried my best.
Still to come on Full Circle Florida, our final thoughts on the week that was and the week ahead.